of the exam papers and how to answer the questions on paper 1, paper 2, and the higher level for paper 3. Just a quick summary, but let's just take a look at paper 1, the essay paper. So in paper 1, you have to choose one question from 3. You'll be given a question on micro, unit 2, macro, unit 3, global economy, unit 4. You choose one of those, and each question is made up of 2 parts. Part A is worth 10 marks, and it's generally just an explain question, sort of textbook analysis. And part B is worth 15 marks, and is the evaluate or discuss question. You should take approximately 30 minutes for part A and 45 minutes for part B. Now, this is the mark scheme for part B, and I just want to point out, if you're looking at the top end here, these are the crucial things that you should cover. And I would actually encourage you to make a note of these at the top of your exam paper before you start writing, that you make sure that you cover each of these bullet points, that relevant theory is fully explained, appropriate terms are used. I mean, I would encourage you just to put definitions of the key terms in the question in your opening sort of introduction. Diagrams, absolutely crucial. It says diagrams, 2 maximum. You don't need more than 2, but they need to be fully explained, properly labeled, and if you use a diagram, you have to explain it in detail. And then the other 2 crucial things are that you've got effective and balanced synthesis, so the discussion, to what extent are the points that you've made going to happen, what does it depend upon? But probably the most important thing, and the one that's often neglected, is the real world examples. I can't stress the importance of this enough, that you integrate real world examples into your answer throughout, not just in the analysis, but in every point that you make in the discussion or evaluation, you try and reinforce that with a real world example. It can be the same example throughout, and you just sort of elaborating on it as you go along, or it can be new examples. Don't get bogged down in data statistics, but try and make sure that you've got something there that is going to illustrate the point that you've made. Paper 2 is the data response. So here you've got 1 hour and 45 minutes. You have a choice of 2 questions. And you probably get 3 articles as well with each of these questions that you answer. The format is the same for each question. And generally speaking, what you'll see is that in part A, you've got 2 definition questions worth 2 marks each. Try and give 2 points in this definition. Don't give an example. There's no marks for an example in part A. Part B depends. You can get 1 calculation and 1 diagram. Maybe it's worth 3 marks for the calculation, 2 marks for the diagram. Could be the other way round. Or you can get 2 calculations. Either way, part B, the 2 parts of it, will be worth 5 marks in total. Part C, D, E, and F are most likely diagram questions worth 4 marks each. Sometimes there's an explain question, but more often than not, they're just diagrams. Sometimes they tell you which diagram to draw. Sometimes they say just using an appropriate diagram. There's 2 marks for the diagram and 2 marks for the explanation. You have to explain your answer using the diagram and focus on the question. Right? Don't just get distracted and write all about the diagram. Make sure you're answering the question as well in your explanation. Part G is the sort of essay type question. It's worth 15 marks, and you should take at least 45 minutes on that. And it focuses on the articles, and it focuses normally on growth and or development. Right? So it'll say that in the question, talking about the growth of the economy or the development of the economy or both. Economic outlook is still growth and development if it says that. And this paper overall is worth 40 marks. Here's the rubric for the Part G final part, a 15 marker. So again, it's very similar to Part B of the essay, paper 1. Do follow the same format, relevant theory, explain the terms, be very clear on the difference between growth and development if you're writing about both of them. So use economic terms appropriately, use a diagrams, again, exactly the same as paper 1. Balance, synthesis, evaluation. It's all got to come in. The only difference is that instead of using real-world examples as you do in paper 1, here you use information from the text. And again, I can't stress the importance enough of integrating information from the text throughout your answer. Like, as much as you can, put in little quotes from the text so that you reinforce the points that you're making. Finally, for those doing HL, is paper 3. So paper 3 contains 2 compulsory questions. It's 1 hour and 45 minutes again. It's primarily HL content, involves calculations, drawing diagrams, and you've got a 10-mark policy question at the end. With your calculations, actually, as in the calculation question in paper 2, make sure you show your working. Like, don't just use a calculator and just put the final answer. You will not get full marks for that question if you haven't shown the working clearly. Make it correct to 2 decimal places if necessary. If it's not an exact answer, make sure you show the unit. So is it in dollars? Is it in billions? You know exactly what it is that you've calculated. Each question is worth 30 marks, so the paper overall is worth 60 marks. Now, my sort of suggestion for the policy question is to imagine that you are an economist who works for a politician. Here's the rubric for the policy question. So you're an economist working for a politician, and you've been asked to suggest to this politician a policy that they need to suggest in front of a committee the next day. That's their brief. So you have to provide that politician with the policy, with the rationale for it, the arguments as to why it's a good policy to use in this situation. But also you want to preempt any questions this politician might get from the committee as to what the downsides might be. So also in your brief, in your report to the politician, you mention some of the issues that potentially could arise with this particular policy. You don't need diagrams. Like, you haven't got enough space for a diagram. It's not expected that you draw diagrams here. You're not going into the in-depth theory. The committee are not going to understand all the welfare areas, surplus areas. All this extra stuff is not important at this particular stage. Okay.